Today we are going to begin with GOC Part 2, lecture number 15. GOC Part 1 was a detailed discussion on nomenclature of organic compounds. Very important thing in the naming of organic compounds, without which you cannot just move forward. So in case you do not have your concepts very strong, well, please do watch those lectures. We have built them in a very detailed manner so that you do not miss anything. Fine. Now moving further, part 2 of this course, where we are talking about isomerism, and in isomerism the lecture that we have reached up to is optical isomerism, lecture number 7. So in fact optical isomerism is also quite a lot discussed till now, and in case you've not watched the previous lectures, trust me, you're not going to understand anything in today's lecture. So the previous lectures, they are going to be all very important for the learning of today's lecture. Why? Well, what we have started the discussion in the last lecture was the RS system of nomenclature of the compounds where there are chirality centers present. So first of all, you should know what is a chirality center, right? And then we have learned how to identify a chirality center. We have learned so many things about optical isomerism, and we have also learned about very important terms like enantiomerism, diastereomers. So all this is what we are going to see in this lecture. So please do watch the previous lectures before viewing this lecture. The last lecture, as I told you, we started with the RS system of nomenclature of the organic compounds. And in this system, if there is one chirality center, we have learned in the last lecture how we are going to name those compounds. So moving further in the discussion, we are going to discuss about this RS system of nomenclature of enantiomers for more than one chirality center. All right. And in this learning, what is going to be more beneficial to you people is, apart from yes naming these compounds, well, a very frequently asked question in the examination is that your molecule is given to you and you have to tell whether the molecules, well, they are going to be enantiomers, they are going to be diastereomers, or they are going to be identical molecules. If you just look at the previous year papers, these are very frequently asked questions related to optical isomerism. So today, while I'm going to tell you about the RS system of nomenclature, using the system, I'm going to give you a trick to find out the given molecules. They are going to be enantiomers, diastereomers, or identical molecules. So this is going to be a very important topic for your learning. I'm Dr. Ritu Johar, your educator from the channel H2O Chemistry, and I hope you're going to enjoy your learning with me and you are going to gain a lot. So naming the isomers with more than one asymmetric carbon, this is very much easy, and this is very much similar to what you have learned in the previous lecture while you were learning about the naming of the compounds with one asymmetric carbon. So the rules are essentially going to be the same. Let us look at an example so that you can understand. Yes, it is very easy. So the example I have is 3-bromo-2-butanol. So it is going to be a 4-carbon chain. Carbon number 1, carbon number 2, carbon number 3, carbon number 4. Second position we have a OH group, and third position we have a bromine. So this is 3-bromo-2-butanol, and I want to tell you, well, what is this compound? Is this an optically active compound? First of all, we should know that. So for that, what we understand is, well, in this molecule, we have two chirality centers, C2 and C3. They both are chirality center because if you look at C2, it's a CH3, a H, a OH, and this group. So 4 different groups. Similarly, C3, this is having 4 different groups attached to it, a bromine, a hydrogen, a CH3, and this group. So 4 different groups, so C2 and C3, they are two chirality center. If it would have been one, we would have been 100% sure, no looking further. But then it is two chirality centers, so you have to check for the elements of symmetry. When you check for the elements of symmetry, what you find is that if I make a plane dividing the molecule into two halves, well, the two halves, they are not going to be the mirror image of each other in any plane that you draw. So there is going to be no plane of symmetry in this molecule. Similarly, there is going to be no center of symmetry in this molecule, and you can look that and appreciate it also. If I put this to be the center of symmetry, a carbon, If I go above, you see a CH3 group, the same distance, opposite direction, I see a CH3 group. So far so good. A hydrogen going backwards, similar distance it would be coming forward. So these would also be equidistant from each other in the opposite direction. But when I look at this side, I see a OH projecting forward and a bromine projecting backwards. So these are not going to be identical groups equidistant from this center of symmetry. So this cannot be the center of symmetry. So no center of symmetry, no plane of symmetry. This molecule is going to be dissymmetrical. Fine. The alternate axis of symmetry you do not have to check, and axis of symmetry is not going to matter. So we check plane of symmetry and we check center of symmetry. The molecule is dissymmetrical. It is going to show optical activity, and the two compounds which are going to be the mirror images of each other, they are going to be non-superimposable, and hence we call such compounds to be enantiomers and optical isomers. So now comes that we have to name this compound. Fine. So this is one of the enantiomeric forms of 3-bromo-2-butanol, and we are well what is going to be the configuration for these two chirality centers. What is going to be the IUPAC name of this compound? So just look at one of the chirality center. Just thinking that this is the only chirality center, can you tell that this is going to have a S configuration or a R configuration? This is what you have learned in the previous lecture. So in the previous lecture, what you learned was that for carbon, the 4 different groups, arrange them according to the priority rules that you learned in the last lecture. First of all, it is going to be OH group, oxygen. This has the atomic number to be the maximum. Then we have a CH3 and we have a CBRHCH3. So to this carbon and this carbon, we'll see that the atomic numbers, they are the same. So we look at the next set of atoms, which was rule number 2 that you learned in the last lecture. And from that, what you find is to this carbon, we have a bromine, which is going to be the highest atomic number atom from the second group of atoms. And here we have all hydrogen. So this is going to be priority group number 2. This is 2, this is 3, and hydrogen with the lowest atomic number is going to be the priority group number 4. Once that is done, because this is the wedge and dash projection for the compound, you have to see that priority group number 4, this should be on the hatched wedge or with the dotted lines, dash. Fine. So you see that hydrogen is with a dash, so you do not have to go think about anything else. What you have to do is put an arrow from priority group number 1 to priority group number 2. And when you do that, what do you see is that this is in the anti-clockwise direction. So this chirality center C2, this is having a S configuration. Similarly, you can do the same thing for this C3 also. And when you do for that, well, the priority groups, bromine is going to be group number 1. This carbon with the oxygen atom is going to be group number 2. Then it is going to be the CH3 group, and then it is going to be the hydrogen. If you have not watched the previous lecture, you have to watch it so that you have an understanding of what all we are discussing. This is just part 2 or the extension of the last lecture. You just cannot understand it without the previous one. So please watch it if you have just switched on this lecture only for your understanding. Fine. Alright, now what you can see over here is this hydrogen, which is the 4th priority group. This is represented by the solid wedge. Where should it be? It should be in the position of bromine, pointing backwards with the hatched wedge. So what do? We change the position of these two. The bromine comes in the position of hydrogen and hydrogen goes in the position of bromine. Then again, from 1 to 2, crossing over 4. So here again a word of caution, please do not move the arrow crossing over group number 3. It has to be always over group number 4. So here when we are going to move from group number 1 to group number 2, this is in the anti-clockwise direction. But the configuration is going to be opposite to what you get over here because you have switched the groups. When you switch two groups, the configuration is going to be of the enantiomeric form. So if this is the S configuration after the switching of bromine and hydrogen, the original molecule, this one, this had the R configuration. right? So now we know that chirality center C2, this has S configuration, and C3, this has the R configuration. So the name of the compound is going to be 2S3R, 3-bromo 2-butanol. Okay, so I hope this is clear to you people. How do we name a compound with more than one asymmetric carbon? If it would be 3, 4, 5, how many number of asymmetric carbons they may be present in a compound? Well, you are going to just look at one of the chirality center and the four groups around it, and you are going to number the priority groups and give the configuration whether it is the S or the R. Now, similar to the wedge and dash projection, you also have to learn the Fisher projection, how you're going to name these compounds. So let us do that as well. So with the Fisher projections also, you will find that even with two asymmetric carbons, the compounds, they can be named in a similar manner by applying the steps to each asymmetric carbon that we applied for a Fisher projection with one asymmetric carbon. So if we have the same compound, that is 3-bromo 2-butanol, now in the Fisher projection. So this is going to be carbon number 1, the top of the vertical line. So CH3, carbon number 1, carbon number 2, carbon number 3, and carbon number 4, OH at position number 2 and bromine at position number 3. So again, you know that C2 and C3, they are chirality centers because they are surrounded by four different groups. So when you talk about C2, again, what are you going to do? Well, you are going to number the priority order for the four groups. So OH is going to be 1. This carbon with a bromine, CH3, and hydrogen will be group number 2. CH3 will be 3 and hydrogen will be 4. What are you going to do? Again, you're going to make an arrow from group number 1 to group number 2. So what are you saying? This is in the clockwise direction. But where is group number 4? Well, this is on the horizontal line. When it is on the horizontal line, you have to reverse the order of the configuration that you got from the arrow. If it is on the vertical line, it remains the same. Because hydrogen group number 4 is on the horizontal line, if from the arrow you get an R configuration, the answer is going to be the S configuration. Had hydrogen be on the vertical line, if the arrow says it is R configuration, it will remain R configuration. Fine. So again, this is something that you learned in the last lecture. Now let us talk about C3. And C3, again, what you're going to do is write the priority order of the groups. So bromine is going to be 1. C2, the chirality center, this is going to be group number 2. Then we have CH3 as group number 3 and hydrogen is going to be group number 4. Again, hydrogen, the group number 4, you find it is on the horizontal line. So your arrow, it is telling us it is the anti-clockwise direction. It should be S, but hydrogen on the horizontal means reverse the order. It will be R configuration. Again, had the fourth priority group been on the vertical line, R would mean a R and S would mean a S. But when it is on the horizontal bond, R means S and S mean R. So the name of the compound, again you can check that this is going to be 2S3R, 3-bromo 2-butanol. And now we can compare it with the wedge and dash projection also. Now, one very important thing that I'm going to tell you over here is how we convert a wedge and dash into a Fisher projection. Well, it is going to be just one chirality center. It is easy. I have told you in the lectures where I told you about this drawing of a Fisher projection and the wedge and dash projection. So here, when we change a wedge and dash with more than one chirality center into a Fisher projection, well, it is going to be very difficult for you people. Why it is going to be difficult is because here we have this carbon joined to two bonds, two groups by two bonds in the plane of the paper, and one is coming forward and one is projecting backwards. But here in a Fisher projection, what do we say? We say that the two groups, they are pointing backwards, and the two groups, they are going to come forward, and then it is going to be something more different and complex for the next. Okay, so a better representation would be that if we convert a wedge and dash representation first of all into the sawhorse projection, which you have not learned till now, and then the sawhorse into the Fisher projection. I'm going to devote a complete lecture into drawing of 4 projections, converting one into the other, because that is going to be very important. But that I will be doing after completing all the topics that are related to optical isomerism, so that you have a complete understanding first of all of the topic, and then once we have learned that, well, we will be learning the rest of the 2 projections, that is the sawhorse and the Newman, and then you can apply any of those 4 projections to the topic of optical isomerism. Okay, so now, well, you have not learned sawhorse projection, so how do you think you will convert this projection into the Fisher projection? Well, very easy is that you have a wedge and dash projection. You know how to write the configuration for it. You know how you're going to write it as a S and a R. Okay. Now what you know is, you know the priority order of the groups also in this. Supposedly, if I ask you what is going to be the priority order for C2, OH is going to be 1. This carbon, that is C3 chirality center, this is going to be group number 2, CH3 is 3, and hydrogen is 4. Now when you have written the structure on the Fisher projection, you know that CH3 is group number 2 and the chirality center 3 is group number 2. What is remaining? Group number 1 and group number 4. And you have to place them vertically. Either hydrogen will be this side or it will be this side. Okay, so when you are going to do that, what you have to see is that the configuration for the Fisher projection should also be S, so that this matches with the wedge and dash. So that is what you have to do all. Okay, so what are you going to do is, you will be putting OH group over here so that it becomes an arrow in the clockwise direction, and the answer in the opposite, that is the S configuration. And similarly you can do for this also. So just knowing the configuration of one of the projections, you can convert that projection into the opposite, and similarly you will be able to convert the Fisher back into the wedge also similarly. Okay, so this is how you are going to benefit from the learning of the S and R configuration. Converting one projection into the other, this is going to become very easy. Now the next thing is that when we had one chirality center, what you have seen is that we have one compound which is going to have a mirror image compound. Both of them, they are non-superimposable. They form a pair of enantiomers, right? But when we have more than one asymmetric carbon, when we have more than one chirality center, well, the number of stereoisomers possible for the compound, they become more. Okay, and the maximum number of stereoisomers for a compound, this can be calculated from the number of asymmetric carbons a compound has. Okay, and what is going to be the maximum number? And remember, this is, I'm telling you, this is the maximum number. The number can be less also, you will be understanding as the lecture progresses. Okay, the maximum number of stereoisomer a compound can have is going to be equal to 2 to the power n. Okay, what is n over here? N is going to be equal to the number of asymmetric carbons. For example, 3-bromo 2-butanol, it had 2 chirality centers, 2 asymmetric carbons. So it will be able to have how many stereoisomers at the maximum? 2 to the power 2, that is, it is going to be 4. So 4 stereoisomers are possible for 3-bromo 2-butanol. One word of caution over here, and that word of caution is that the number of stereoisomers, well, this can depend upon some other stereo centers also apart from the chirality center. You have learned in the previous lectures that the geometrical isomerism also results in stereoisomers, the cis and the transforms, right? So if in a compound along with the chirality center there is present a carbon-carbon double bond which is giving rise to cis and trans structures, well, then the number of stereoisomers will be more. So here what you have to remember is that the number of stereoisomers a compound can have at the maximum because of chirality center. If only chirality center they are present in the molecule, not any other stereo centers, well, that is going to be equal to 2 to the power n. Okay, I hope this is clear to you people. So it, for example, 3-bromo 2-butanol, it will be having 4 stereoisomers, which you can now see on your screen. So how do we draw these 4 isomers? First of all, you should be able to understand this. So here what you can see is this is 2s3r. How did we draw it? Well, we just put the 4 carbons of the chain, okay, in the plane of paper. Then the 2 groups, what we do is we are going to put it like, for example, I put at a random, I can do anything. I put a hydrogen on the C2 with a solid wedge and a bromine backwards, okay, and over here the OH and the hydrogen, the positions that you can see. So I have placed them at any position I wanted, and then I named the compound. Fine. Now the next thing I will be doing is, because this is a chiral molecule, I will be drawing its mirror image compound. Fine, I draw its mirror image compound. I am going to name the compound, and that is very interesting. You can see also, I'm not telling you now to how to find out the name, because you have learned that in the previous lecture and in this also. The name of this compound, what you can see is this comes as 2R and 3S. Okay, in the last lecture I told you that whenever we are going to have an enantiomer, if one enantiomer has the R configuration, the other is going to have the S configuration. Here you can see that the C2, this had the 2S configuration, and this one, this had a 2R configuration. Okay, and this is a 3R configuration, so this will be a 3S configuration. So there is a reverse of the configuration at both the chirality centers. Perfectly fine. Now what have I done? Well, what I have done is I have kept the H and the OH groups to be the same, and I have changed the position of H and Br. So this is going to give rise to another stereoisomer. And now what you can see is this compound and this compound, they will not be mirror images of each other. Okay, so these are yet still stereoisomers. They are not a mirror image of each other. These two, they were enantiomers, and now these two, because they are stereoisomers which are not mirror images of each other, they will be called as diastereomers. And the configuration of the compound, this is 2s and 3s. And again, this is going to be a chiral compound, and you are going to draw its mirror image compound. So here this is going to be a 2s and a 3s. So this is going to be a 2r and a 3r. So these are the 4 stereoisomers which are possible for 3-bromo 2-butanol. So now I have drawn all the 4 stereoisomers in both the projections, the wedge and dash also, and in the fissure also. So you can learn converting one into the other with the help of the names. The names have already been given, and the names, when I'm talking about the names for the fissure projection, well, the naming of the 4 compounds is going to be very easy if you just know the name of one of them. Okay, how? Let me tell you that also. So here what you can see is this is C2. Here you have a H towards the right side and the OH towards the left side. Fine. So this you called as the 2S. Here what you can see is the rest, everything is on the same for this carbon, a CH3 and this group. Okay, so this is only the carbon that you are seeing over here. So these are constant. What is changed for this carbon is the OH and the H. They have interchanged their position. So it is going to be an interchange of 2 groups. When it is an interchange of 2 groups, the configuration is going to change. Okay, so if it was a 2s over here, now it is going to be a 2r. Right, and if you look at this one, H and the Br have changed their position. So if it is a 3r over here, it will be a 3s over here. Similarly, you can look at this one also. So here you can see the H and the OH, they are in the same position. So this means that there is no change of the groups. Okay, so it will be a 2s, so it is also a 2s. Here the Br and the H, in this reference, they have interchanged their positions, right? So an interchange of 2 groups, again the configuration is going to be opposite. If it is a 3r, it is going to be a 3s. Here again what you can look is the OH and the H, they have interchange position, so 2S becomes 2R. The H and the Br, they are in the same position, so 3R remains 3R. Okay, so this is one very easy way to write the Fisher projection, all the four names. Now what you can see is that all of these compounds, they have different names, right? All they have different names. So this means the IUPAC names of these compounds, they are different, and hence these are four stereoisomers which are different from each other. Okay. Now, the next thing that is going to be asked to you in the examination is that you have to identify whether they are enantiomers, they are diastereomers, or they are identical molecules. So, how do you do that? Well, one way is again going to be look at the molecule, find the plane of symmetry, find the center of symmetry. Yes, this molecule is optically active. Then this molecule and its mirror image compound, they are going to form enantiomers, right? And if you look at this molecule and this molecule, well, they are stereoisomers, but they are not the mirror images of each other. If they are not the mirror images of each other, well, what does that mean? Well, they are going to be diastereomers. Those stereoisomers which are not the mirror images of each other, they are called as diastereomers. So CH3 is matching H and OH, H and OH, right? So this is not a mirror image. So the H and Br, yes, this is a mirror image, but H and OH, they are just the same. So these are not the mirror images of each other, but still they are stereoisomers. So these two, they will be forming a pair of diastereomers. Again, if you look at these two, they form a pair of enantiomers, right? And if you look at this one and well, say the first one, so these are going to again form a pair of diastereomers because they are not going to be mirror images of each other. Now the RS configuration, again this is going to be very helpful to you to tell which is going to be the enantiomer, which is going to be the diastereomer. How? So here just remember one thing, that the enantiomers, they have opposite configuration at both the asymmetric carbons, whereas the diastereomers, they have the same configuration at one asymmetric carbon and the opposite configuration at the other. Okay, so what do you have to see? Just simply see the RS configuration. That is going to be very easy for you. You have to just name these compounds and you have to look. So here you can see is that we have a 2S and a 3R. Here what you are seeing is 2S becomes a 2R and a 3R becomes a 3S. So both the asymmetric carbons, they are having opposite configuration. When they have an opposite configuration at both the asymmetric carbons, well, it is going to be an enantiomer. Easy enough. No plane of symmetry checking, nothing doing. So you can just look at, first of all, they were stereoisomers and now they have just different configuration at both asymmetric carbons, and we found that these two, they are enantiomers. Now if you look at this one and compare it to structure number 1, so here it is a 2S and a 2S, that means this is the same configuration at C2, and a 3R and a 3S. At C3 we have a different configuration, the opposite configuration. So this means that this is going to form a pair of diastereomers. They will never be a mirror image of each other. For a mirror image, they have to be opposite each other. So this forms a pair of enantiomers. This you can look 2S, 3S, 2R, 3R. So they are forming a pair of enantiomers. But if you compare 4 with 2, well, that is going to be diastereomer. 1 with 3 is a diastereomer, 1 with 4 is a diastereomer, 2 with a 3 is a diastereomer, 2 with 4 is a diastereomer. Okay, 1 and 2 they are enantiomers, 3 and 4 they are enantiomers. And with the RS configuration telling which is going to be enantiomer, which is going to be a diastereomer, is going to be very easy for you. Okay, now what you have to see is whether these enantiomers that you have made, they are enantiomers or they are identical also. Okay, so for that what you have to do is that you have to rotate this molecule in the Fisher projection by an angle of 180 degree. Okay, but you just do not have to take it lift it from the plane of paper. Okay, so you have to just keep it on the plane of paper, and then only you have to move the molecule. Then you will be able to check whether this molecule, whether they are enantiomers or not. Fine, so that was a test for chirality. I hope you all remember, just rotating the molecule at an angle of 180 degree. Okay, so I hope you remember that. So what you can do is that this CH3 will come in this place, this CH3 will come in its place. Okay, when this CH3 goes above, this hydrogen, the lower one, will come in the position of OH, this one will come in the position of Br. Okay, so it will be same this side. But when you are going to move this CH3 below, this OH is going to come below. Okay, this one which was on the top, when this comes down, so this will be going along with it, it will be coming over here. So we will be getting a OH over here. So OH and a Br, if you're going to again superimpose them on each other, well, you will be finding that they will be non-superimposable. They were non-superimposable as such, and they will be non-superimposable when they are going to be rotated at an angle of 180 degree also, so they form a pair of enantiomers. The other thing that you can check is that this molecule does not have a plane of symmetry. Okay, so you will be just now understanding with one more example where you are going to see less number of stereoisomers. So the next example that we will be seeing is tartaric acid, and tartaric acid is one example that we have been discussing in all the lectures of optical isomerism. This is one compound that is very important when we talk about optical isomerism. In the last lecture, when we were talking about the center of symmetry, there I showed you the models to make you understand the pair of enantiomers that are there for tartaric acid and the meso compound that is there for tartaric. And in the meso compound, while we were talking about the plane of symmetry, you saw that this meso-tartaric acid, this has a plane of symmetry. That is why we say it is optically inactive. And also, in one of the different rotations of this carbon-carbon sigma bond, what we saw is that there is also a center of symmetry present. So there are two conformers for the compound. In one of the conformer, you will be able to see plane of symmetry, and in the other you will be able to see the center of symmetry. And that is why in the wedge and dash representation, the way I have drawn this structure, well, this is showing the center of symmetry in the compound. If this dot over here, well, this is the center of symmetry, carbon this side, a COH group up, and in the opposite direction a COH group down, so equidistant from the center of symmetry, a OH group projecting forwards and a OH group projecting in the opposite direction backwards. So again they are going to be equidistant from the center, and the hydrogen back and the hydrogen forward in the opposite carbons. Well, again this is going to be the center of symmetry. And in the Fischer projection, which is very easy to identify, is the plane of symmetry in the meso compound. So if we draw a plane between C2 and C3, it is going to bisect the molecule into two halves, which are going to be the mirror images of each other. And hence we say that meso-tartaric acid, this is optically inactive. I'm going to talk just now more about the meso compound with you people. But before that, what you can see is that the other two isomers for the compound, they are going to be a pair of enantiomers. How are we going to ascertain this? Just now, with the help of the RS system of nomenclature, we can tell which is going to be a pair of enantiomers and which is going to be a pair of diastereomers. So here, if you look at the names of the compounds in the wedge and dash representation and the Fischer projection of that, what you can see is the meso compound, this has a 2R3S configuration for C2 and C3. The second compound that you can say, this has a 2R and a 3R, and the third compound, this has a 2S3S configuration, right? So when we are comparing 1 and 2 structures, what you can see is that this has a 2R and a 2R, a 3S and a 3R. One of the carbons, this is having a same configuration and the other is having opposite. So this means that this is going to be a diastereomeric pair. right? And when we look at second and third structure, what you can see is 2R and 2S, 3R and 3S. So both the chirality centers, they are having different configuration. One is having R, the other is having S. So this forms a pair of enantiomers, right? Similarly, you can compare 1 and 3 also. They are going to be a pair of diastereomers. 1 and 2, they are going to be non-mirror images of each other. 2 and 3, they are going to be the mirror images of each other, which are going to be non-superimposable, right? I hope this is clear. All right. Now, while we were talking about the last example, there what we learned is that the maximum number of stereoisomers possible for a compound, that is going to be equal to 2 to the power n, where n is the number of chirality center. Now, in this compound, the tartaric acid, this has two chirality centers, C2 and C3. And very interestingly, before I just continue further, both of the two asymmetric carbons, this has the same set of four substituents. That is very important for you people to remember, that it has four substituents which are same, and that is why you are able to see the mesostructure in this compound. Okay. And that is why we see a plane of symmetry over here, and hence the molecule, this becomes optically inactive. Now what I was referring to you was that for tartaric acid, when we have two chirality centers, 2 to the power 2, it should have 4 stereoisomers. Why are we saying that it has just 3 stereoisomers? That is very important for you. Okay, so this compound and its mirror image compound, these are two stereoisomers. What about the mirror image compound of this? This is also having two chirality centers. Well, let us draw the mirror image for the structure. Okay, so here I have drawn the mirror image, and I've just drawn it slightly differently so that you can just differentiate between them. Okay, so here what you can see, if I name this compound, well, here you have a OH and a H, here you have a H and a OH. So this is the exchange of two carbons. So this means that if this C2, it has a R configuration, this one would be having a S configuration, right? So I can write it as a 2S. And for the 3 chirality center, the third carbon, you can see again this is a OH and a H, and it is a H and a OH, again exchange of two groups. So if this is having a 3S, this is going to have a 2R configuration, sorry, a 3R configuration, right? So this will be a 3R. So this is a 2S3R, and this is a 2R3S. Again, the name of the compounds, this is different, right? So why are we still not including this as a stereoisomer for tartaric acid? Well, here what you have to understand is that you have to check for the chirality of the molecules, whether they are going to be superimposable on each other or not to qualify as enantiomers. Well, you are just going to rotate the molecule at an angle of 180 degree without lifting it from the plane of paper. So this COOH group will go above, this will come below. Fine. This OH will be occupying position number 2, and this one will be occupying position number 3, just like in this molecule. And similarly, these two hydrogens will go on the opposite side. And hence, when you're going to rotate this molecule at an angle of 180 degree in the plane of paper, you are going to get this structure. Okay, so the rotated molecule and this molecule, well, they are going to be identical molecules. They are mirror images of each other, but superimposable mirror images. And this is the test for chirality. Do you remember that you are going to tell whether they are going to be enantiomeric pair or identical by rotating the molecule by an angle of 180 degree to find it out. Okay, so here you find that this structure, now if this structure is 1 and this structure is 2, well, these two structures, they are identical molecules. Now how do we ascertain this from the RS system of nomenclature? Both of them, they are having different names. Well, for this, what you have to understand again is that this tartaric acid, it had two of the asymmetric carbons having the same set of four substituents. So if you are numbering this compound from this side, this is carbon number 1, the configuration you get is a 2R and a 3S. But well, you can number this compound from this side also, because that is also going to give you the same name. Okay, so if I start from this side, it is going to be 2,3 dihydroxy 1,4 butane dioic acid, and if I start from this side also, then it is also going to be 2,3-dihydroxybutane 1,4-dioic acid. And when I'm going to start from this side, if you see now what is going to be the configuration, now this would become C2. If this becomes C2, well, this has what configuration? Well, this is going to have a S configuration, right? And this was having a R configuration. So this would become a 2S and a 3R. 2S, 3R tartaric acid. And this compound and this compound, well, they have the same name now. So they are identical molecules. So when you find that the two asymmetric carbons, they are having the same set of 4 substituents, there the meso compound, first of all, that is going to be formed. And when that meso compound is forming, that meso compound and its mirror image compound, they are going to be identical. They are going to be superimposable on each other. So this is how you find out the difference between enantiomers, diastereomers and identical molecules. I hope this is very clear to you people, because this is going to very frequently come in your examination. Write down the configuration for the compounds. You will be able to find out the difference between, first of all, the enantiomers and the diastereomers, right? The enantiomers, they will be having the different configuration at both the chirality centers. And if they are going to be diastereomers, they will be having the same configuration at one chirality center, and they will be having a different configuration another chirality center. When you are having a pair of enantiomers, just check that, okay, because they will be forming a mirror image. Either they are identical molecules or they are going to be enantiomers. Fine. So there what you will be checking is, if in the Fischer projection you can quickly just rotate the molecule by an angle of 180 degree, or you can check the symmetry of the molecule, that is symmetrical, it is having same set of 4 substituents. The name of the compound from this side or this side, it is going to be the same. Well, then the two structures, they are going to be identical structures. They will be mirror images but superimposable one, and hence we call them as identical molecules. Okay. So now for quite a long time we have been talking about mesotartaric acid. So let us learn more about these mesoforms. A meso compound is an achiral molecule that contains chirality centers, and the meso compounds, they are optically inactive compounds. Just like you have seen in the case of mesotartaric acid, there were two chirality centers in the molecule, yet the molecule did not show optical activity. Therefore, we call that to be a achiral molecule. That compound and its mirror image compound, they were superimposable on each other. They were identical structures, and for that reason we found that the compound, it had not 4 stereoisomers, but it had 3 stereoisomers. Let us look at one more example. The example I am taking here is of 2,3-butane diol, and the stereoisomers I draw for these is the 3 isomers. So again what you see is that there are only 3 and not 4 stereoisomers 2,3-butane diol has. Okay, and the 2R and the 3R compound and the 2S3S compound, they are going to be the enantiomers of each other. They are the mirror images of each other, and the mirror images which are going to be non-superimposable on each other. One is going to rotate the plane polarized light in the clockwise direction. The other one is going to rotate the plane polarized light in the anti-clockwise direction. Therefore, they have an equal and opposite optical rotation. Both of them, they are enantiomers. They are optical isomers also. And the third compound is a combination of the stereogenic centers, a 2R, a 3S. This gives a achiral structure that is going to be superimposable on its mirror image, which is going to be a 2S3S compound. So if you start the numbering from this side, well, what you will be seeing is that this is the OH group, this is the carbon, that will be group number 2, priority group number 1, priority group number 2. So the arrow is going to be in the clockwise direction, hydrogen on the horizontal, so it is going to be S. So this structure, this is a 2s and a 3r, and if you start the numbering from this side, it is going to be a 2r and a 3s, but both of them, they are going to be superimposable mirror image of each other, and hence they are optically inactive. Fine. So chiral molecules that have stereogenic centers, please always do remember that they are called as mesoforms. Now, one very important thing that you can always identify the mesoform is the Fischer projections. So out of the 3 stereoisomeric 2,3-butane diols, only in the mesostereoisomer you will be able to draw a plane of symmetry. Right, so you will be able to draw a dashed line which through the center of the Fischer projection, which is going to divide the molecule into 2 mirror image halves. So a Fischer projection helps you identify the mesoforms. Very importantly, remember that. And also what you can remember over here is that the plane of symmetry, this has 2 chirality center. So why does this molecule have optical inactivity? What you can think of this is that one of the chirality center is going to rotate the plane polarized light supposedly in the clockwise direction. The other chirality center, because it is opposite direction, one is a R and the other is a S, it is going to rotate the plane polarized light in the opposite direction, and the total effect is going to be zero optical activity. Right, so if this one is a S configuration, this is the enantiomeric form of that, it is going to be the R configuration. If this one is rotating the light in the clockwise direction, this is going to rotate the light in the anti-clockwise direction, and as a net result, optical rotation is going to be zero. Okay, and we say that the meso compounds, they are considered to be optically inactive because of internal compensation due to the presence of plane of symmetry. All right, so the activity of one is being compensated in the molecule only by an opposite rotation, and hence we say that the meso compounds, they are optically inactive. The word internal compensation is going to be important for you. Many times it comes examination. So now we have seen 2 examples. One example we took of 3-bromo-2-butanol, and the other example we took was tartaric acid. In both of them, what you found was that the maximum number of stereoisomers possible is 2 to the power n. But if there are going to be identical structures formed, it can be less than that, as you saw in the case of tartaric acid, where we had just 3 stereoisomers. Right? Alright, now if in your examination you have more than 2 chirality centers, there are 3, 4, 5 chirality centers, and then you are asked how many stereoisomers they are going to be possible for the compound, whether the compound it has meso structures or not, whether the compound is going to form optical isomers or not, how many optical isomers is going to be forming. Well, it is going to be very difficult for you if you have to write down all the structures possible and then count which are going to be optical isomers, which are going to be enantiomers, which are going to be diastereomers, which are going to be mesoforms, which are going to be identical structures. So that is going to take a lot of time. So well, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a trick to find the total number of stereoisomers which is possible for a given compound, or the number of enantiomers and meso compounds which are going to be present in that structure. So it will give you the exact number. What have you to do for that? Well, what you have to do is that you are going to count the number of chirality centers present in the molecule, and then you are going to just check whether the chirality centers, they are similar or dissimilar. So what I mean is, supposedly we have one chirality center, so which we have done in the previous lecture. You know that if one chirality center is there, then the compound is going to be optically active. That compound is non-superimposable mirror image compound. They are forming a pair of enantiomers, or they will be forming a pair of optical isomers. There will be no mesoform. Okay. Right, so that is not what we are discussing in this lecture. What we will be discussing is 2 or more than 2 chirality center where a large number of stereoisomers is possible. Fine. So there, what are you going to do? Well, you are going to count the number of chirality centers and check around the chirality center what are the types of groups that are present. If it is going to be all similar type of groups for all the chirality centers, we say that the chirality centers, they are similar. If any one of the group around the chirality centers, they are different, we will be calling those chirality centers to be dissimilar. Okay, and then what are we going to do? Well, if supposedly the molecules, they have dissimilar chirality centers and the number of chirality centers, let that be n. So the total number of optical isomers is going to be equal to 2 to the power n. The number of mesoforms is going to be equal to 0, and the total number of stereoisomers is going to be equal to the total number of optical isomers plus number of mesoforms, which is going to be equal to 2 to the power n. This is when the molecules, they have dissimilar chirality centers, as you have seen in the case of 3-bromo-2-butanol, and I'm going to give you one more example. So the example that I am taking over here, this is of butane 1,2,3 triol. If you write down the structure, this will be carbon number 1, carbon number 2, carbon number 3, carbon number 4, 4 carbon chains. So butane at position number 1, position number 2 and position number 3, there is a OH group. So this becomes butane 1,2,3 triol. Just looking at the structure, can you tell the number of chirality centers? Yes, carbon number 1, there are 2 hydrogens, cannot be a chirality center. Carbon number 2, a H, a OH, a CH2OH, and this big group. So this means there are 4 different groups. So chirality center, similarly C3 is also going to be a chirality center, and carbon number 4, this is a CH3. So 3 hydrogens, not all 4 dissimilar groups. So this means that this will also not be a chirality center. So total number of chirality centers, they are going to be 2, and both of them, they are going to be dissimilar chirality centers, because not all 4 groups, they are going to be similar for the 2 carbons. Alright, so here what are we going to apply? The formula for finding out the total number of optical isomers. Well, that is going to be equal to 2 to the power n. So if n is 2, the number of total optical isomers possible for the compound is going to be 4. Mesoforms is going to be 0. And the total number of stereoisomers for this compound is going to be equal to 4. Okay, so if we draw these structures, this will be structure number 1, 2, 3 and 4. Fine. So this is carbon number 1, carbon number 2, carbon number 3 and carbon number 4. A H and a OH, a OH and a H. Reverse the condition. This is going to be its mirror image compound. So these form a pair of enantiomers. Keeping one H and OH same, change the direction of the other groups. So you will be forming 2 hydrogens on one side and 2 H groups on one side. Have a mirror image of this structure. So these are going to be the 4 possible stereoisomers for this compound, and all of them, they are 4 optical isomers. Right, so optical isomers are going to be those compounds which are going to be stereoisomers, which are showing optical activity, and all 4 of them, they can show optical activity. Right, all of them, they have dissymmetric structures. None of them will be having a plane of symmetry. None of them will be having a center of symmetry. Perfectly fine. I hope this is clear. 1 and 2, they form a pair of enantiomers. 3 and 4, they form a pair of enantiomers. 1 and 3, 1 and 4. 2 and 3, 2 and 4, they are going to be related to each other as diastereomers, because they will be non-mirror image stereoisomers for each other. Perfectly clear. I hope you have no problem. So we have total number of optical isomers for this compound to be all 4 of them. There are no mesoforms, and the total number of stereoisomers is also going to be equal to 4. The next we look at the molecules which have similar chirality centers, as you have seen in the case of tartaric acid. So here what you are going to do is you are going to count the total number of chirality center, whether the number of chirality center is even or it is odd. If the number of chirality centers is even, as you have seen in the case of tartaric acid where we had 2 chirality centers, so in that case the total number of optical isomers is going to be equal to 2 to the power n minus 1, where n is going to be the number of chirality centers.
the number of mesoforms is going to be equal to 2 to the power n by 2 minus 1, and the total number of isomers, stereoisomers is what we are talking about here, that will be equal to the total number of optical isomers plus the number of mesoforms, that is 2 to the power n minus 1 plus 2 to the power n by 2 minus 1. Right? So for example, we have tartaric acid. You have already seen the structures. So here we have two chirality centers, so n is equal to 2. The number of optical isomers is going to be equal to 2 to the power n minus 1, so this means it will be equal to 2 to the power 2 minus 1. So this will be 2 to the power 1. That means the total number of optical isomers is going to be 2. The number of mesoforms is 2 to the power n by 2 minus 1. So n is 2. So 2 by 2, that will be 1. 1 minus 1 will be 0. So 2 to the power 0. So the number of mesoforms is going to be 1. And the total number of stereoisomers is going to be 2 plus 1. That is 3. As you have seen already in the examples, we have on all the 3 stereoisomers for tartaric acid. I am going to put them once again. So what you can see is structure 1 and structure 2, they are the mirror image of each other and they are non-superimposable on each other, or you can say that these are dissymmetrical molecules because there will be no plane of symmetry, there will be no center of symmetry. These form a pair of optical isomers and hence they are going to be a pair of enantiomers also. Okay, and this compound, this is the mesoform where we have a plane of symmetry present in the molecule. So 1 and 2, they are enantiomers. 2 and 3 or 1 and 3, they are going to form a pair of diastereomers. Okay, and the compound which you have not seen over here, that is going to be the mirror image compound of this, and that is going to be identical structure. Okay. So next we have the molecules with similar chirality centers and the number of chiral carbons. This is an odd number. So here the formula that we will be using is number of optical isomers. This will be equal to 2 to the power n minus 1 minus 2 to the power n minus 1 divided by 2. Number of mesoforms will be equal to 2 to the power n minus 1 divided by 2. Total number of stereoisomers, this will be equal to the sum total of these two. So all solving this, you will be getting this as 2 to the power n minus 1. So let us look at an example. We have trihydroxyglutaric acid. This is carbon number 1, carbon number 2, carbon number 3, 4 and 5. So this is pentane 1,5-dioic acid with 2, 3 and 4 position having OH groups. So 2, 3, 4. Trihydroxypentane 1,5-dioic acid. This is going to be the IUPAC name for this compound. In this, what you will be finding is that we have 3 chirality centers. I would like to discuss about the chirality centers when we are going to see the Fischer projections, because that is going to be very important. But we have 3 chirality centers, so n is going to be equal to 3. The number of optical isomers, when you're going to put the values in the formula and you're going to solve this, what you will be getting is equal to 2. And the number of mesoforms, this is going to be equal to 2, and the total number of stereoisomers, this will be 2 plus 2, that will be equal to 4. So now let us look at the Fischer projections for the 4 stereoisomers of trihydroxyglutaric acid. So if you look at structure number 1, structure number 2, structure number 3 and structure number 4, these are the 4 stereoisomers which are possible for trihydroxyglutaric acid. Okay, in structure number 1, now I want you to look at the chirality centers. We have just now referred that we have 3 chirality centers in this molecule. Okay, so this is carbon number 1, this is carbon number 2, carbon number 3, carbon number 4 and carbon number 5. Carbon number 1 and carbon number 5, these cannot be chirality centers, right? Because these two, they are going to be sp2 hybridized. Fine. So we have a C double bonded O. Next we look at C2. C2, it has 4 different groups, a OH, a COH, H and the scole of the group. Similarly, C4 also has 4 different groups surrounding it. So C2 and C4, they act as chirality centers. What about now C3? So I want you to focus on this and understand this very carefully. If you look at C3, you will be seeing that it has on one side a H, a OH, Above you will be seeing the C2. This is having a OH, a COH and a H. And on the other side it has a C4 carbon which is also surrounded by a OH, a COH and a H. So aren't these C2 and C4 groups which are surrounding this C3 to be similar? So this means that this should not be a chirality center. If this is not a chirality center, how are we including it in a chiral carbon? Well, what we refer to this carbon in structure number 1 and structure number both is this is a pseudo chiral carbon. Why do we call it as a pseudo chiral carbon? For this, what you have to see is what is the configuration of C2 and what is the configuration of C4. If you look at C2, first of all, this is going to be priority group number 1, priority group number 2, C3 is going to be the priority group number 3, and hydrogen is going to be priority group number 4. When you're going to draw the arrow from 1 to 2, this is in the clockwise direction. Hydrogen is on the horizontal position. So what we can say is that C2, this has what configuration? It has an S configuration. Okay. Now let us look at C4. If you look at C4, this is going to be group number 1, group number 2. Again, C3 will be acting as group number 3 and hydrogen will be group number 4. Now when you're going to draw an arrow from 1 to 2, this is in the anti-clockwise direction. Hydrogen is on the fourth, on the horizontal bond. So this is going to be having an opposite configuration. So that is going to be a R configuration. So C2 has an S configuration and C4 has an R configuration, and this is what we call as a pseudo chirality center. Around this center, what you see is that they are similar groups, but the configuration of the groups is different. One has a S configuration and the other has a R configuration. Such a chirality center actually is not a chirality center, but it is a stereogenic center. We call this to be a pseudo chiral center. Okay, I hope this is clear. So in total, therefore, we will be having 3 stereogenic centers for this compound. And now why do we call them as similar ones? Let us see that also. It is very important for you to understand small little basics. Otherwise, you are going to be in a fix. Okay. So when we are going to start from the center carbon. Okay. So this is going to be C3. If you look at this side, we have a similar group. This side you have a similar group. When you move on to the next set of chirality center, this is going to be the next set of chirality centers, and these two chirality centers, they will be again having similar groups. For this one, it is going to be a OS, COH and a H with this one, and for this one also it is going to be similar groups. Okay, so that is why we say that it has 3 similar chirality centers. Okay, so I hope now you are clear about this, and then you can just apply the formula, the total number of optical isomers, the meso isomers, and the total number of isomers. Okay, now let us look at structure number 1 and structure number 2. What do you find? Well, these are the mirror images of each other and they will be non-superimposable on each other. If you just write down the configurations for them, you will be seeing that each of the chirality centers, there is going to be a different configuration. Fine. Okay, and then, well, they are therefore going to be what? They are going to be enantiomers. Okay, now let us look at the next structure. In the next structure, what you can see is that if I draw a plane of symmetry, well, this way, well, what you will be having, the two halves is to be identical mirror image halves. Similarly, for structure number 4, if I draw a plane of symmetry, bisecting this hydrogen, this carbon and the OH group, well, we will be again having mirror image halves on the opposite side of the plane of symmetry. So both of these compounds, they have a plane of symmetry. So these compounds, they are going to be the mesoforms. Okay. Now, the number of possible isomers, maximum number of possible isomers was what? That is going to be equal to 2 to the power n, where n is the number of chiral carbons. So that is going to be equal to 6. and we have just drawn 4 structures. So for the rest of the 2 structures, well, this is going to be one structure and its mirror image, but that will be superimposable on each other. So that is going to be identical structures. Similarly, 4 and its mirror image, they will be superimposable on each other. Therefore, that will be also identical structures. So in total, out of the 6 possible stereoisomers, we just get 4. 2 being enantiomers and 2 being the mesoforms, and we have calculated it without even writing the structures. So if it is asked to you just in the questions that you have to tell the number of optical isomers, the mesoisomers or the stereoisomers, well, you do not have to think so much. You just have to apply the formula and write your answer. So that is going to be time saving for you people. Now, before I conclude this lecture, there is just one important information for you people, which I'm actually going to utilize in the next lecture, which is going to be the concluding lecture on optical isomerism. So we are going to differentiate between diastereomers and enantiomers that you have learned the maximum in this lecture, right? So diastereomers, they are stereoisomers which do not have a mirror image relationship, whereas the enantiomers, they are stereoisomers which have a mirror image relationship. The diastereomers, they have different physical properties. For example, they will be having different boiling points, melting points, solubility, specific rotations, whereas the enantiomers, they will be having similar physical properties. Okay, the difference is going to be only in the specific rotation. The value is going to be same, the sign is going to be different. One is going to be rotating the plane polarized light in the clockwise direction, the other one is going to be rotating the plane polarized light in the opposite direction. Okay, so they can be separated by physical methods like fractional distillation, crystallization, etc., whereas the enantiomers, they cannot be done so. The diastereomers, they may have rotation in the same direction but to a different extent. They may have rotation in the opposite direction also in some of the cases, but the enantiomers, they will be always having the rotation in the opposite direction but to the same extent. That is what we've just now talked. One will be rotating the plane polarized light in the clockwise direction, the other one will be rotating in the anti-clockwise direction but to the same extent. The diastereomers, they have different chemical properties. They react with the same achiral reagent at different rates. The enantiomers, they have identical chemical properties. They react at the same rate with a given achiral reagent. But when they are going to react with optically active compounds, chiral reagents, it is then that they are going to show a different behavior. Again, this is something that I will be talking to you in the next lecture.
With this, the learning of this lecture is complete, and now the ball is in your court. How is it in your court? Well, you all can see that we have a question here for you people. In the molecule 2,3-dihydroxybutanoic acid, the structure you can see over here, how many stereoisomers they are possible? So you have to tell that. Number one, you have to write the IUPAC names for all the possible structures that you are going to tell, that these main stereoisomers, they are going to be there. And then you have to label all those structures as enantiomers, diastereomers and identical molecules, right? So how are you going to give me the answers? Well, the option number one is that the email ID of ours is going to be written at the end of this lecture. So you can send your answers by an email to us. Number two, you can join us on the Facebook page of the channel. The Facebook page of the channel has the same name as the channel itself, that is H2O, the A to Z of chemistry. So join us on the Facebook page of the channel. That is going to be very beneficial to you because there we keep on posting questions also related to chemistry of class 11 and class 12. You can participate in that quizzes also with us. That is going to improve your learning further. So you can post in your answers there also. And that is going to be very fantastic if you do that, and that is going to improve your learning. You can put your answers in the comment section also, the number of stereoisomers, the names of all the possible structures. When you're writing the names, just put them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever is the number of the stereoisomers, and then tell the relationship between 1 and 2. What is it going to be? Either it is enantiomer, diastereomers, or identical molecules. So this is something that you can do in the comment section also. So wherever you are doing that, it is going to be highly recommended that you answer, so that we also come to know how much you have gained from these lectures. Okay. So that would be all for this lecture. I'm going to look forward to your answers, and the email ID, as I told you, is h2chemistry@gmail.com. So post in your answers in the email ID, join us on the Facebook page of the channel, or put your answers in the comment section, but please do post them. So the next lecture, again, this is going to be a very important lecture. You're going to learn about many more important things related to optical isomerism. Essentially, it is going to be the concluding part of the last on the topic of optical isomerism, right? So see you again. Have a nice day. God bless you.